Okay, so it was a successful night for the Charlo twins. Both of them put in real good performances. First of all, Jermall Charlo against Sergiy Derevyanchenko. Now, I saw this as a real 50-50 pick'em fight because although Jermall Charlo and his brother Jamel usually do well against pressure fighters, they usually do well against fighters who come at them because they're able to walk the opponents on, the pressure fighter on, to fast combinations, stinging shots up close. That's really their comfort zone for both Charlos, is when opponents are coming at them. When they have to go and look for opponents, especially if they're slick boxers, like Korobov, for example, that's when both of them, or Tony Harrison, that's when both of them seem to struggle, when they have to go looking for people who are slick boxers. But when people are coming to them, pressure fighters, they usually do well and look good. Having said that, I wasn't sure with Derevyanchenko because, yes, he's a pressure fighter, but because he's short, he is successfully able to get underneath people's punches. And I hadn't seen Charlo fight anybody who gets that low and uses that type of head movement as he's coming forward. So, again, I saw it kind of as a pick'em fight. With my pre-fight video, I said that the politics favor Jermall Charlo. So if it does go the distance, and I think it probably will, I would say if you're going to bet on it, take Charlo on points. But that wasn't me outright picking Charlo. That was me saying it's a close fight. It's a pick'em, but you're better off going with Charlo on points because the politics are going to be in his favor. But as it turned out, Charlo was levels above Sergiy Derevyanchenko. He proved that in this fight. He boxed very well from long range throughout the fight, really, but particularly in the first half. He had Derevyanchenko hesitant to come in. Now, Derevyanchenko has been a slow starter in the past. He certainly was against Danny Jacobs and Gennady Golovkin. He was dropped in both those fights early. In this fight against Charlo, he didn't get dropped, but he nearly did early in the fight. So again, his fights following this similar pattern. Now, unlike the Jacobs fight and the Golovkin fight, Derevyanchenko did start to build up a head of steam against Charlo as he did in those fights. But what made it different is that Charlo was putting a lot more damage on Derevyanchenko than those two guys were. A lot more damage, and he wasn't taking as many punches back as those two guys, Golovkin and Danny Jacobs. So the defensive ability of Charlo was good. He was using his height and reach very well. His size, he was physically strong. So even when Derevyanchenko eventually started, building up a head of steam and attacking him and coming forward and managing to stay in the pocket for longer periods, for the most part, he wasn't very effective. There was a moment in the fight, I forget which round it was, where he appeared to hurt Charlo with a body shot. And we know that Derevyanchenko can be dangerous with those body shots. We saw that against Golovkin. But other than that fleeting moment, it was all Charlo. He just had the body language and the poise of somebody who looked like he was in control the whole way. He looked like he was comfortable the whole time. And as I say, he was landing the cleaner, more damaging, more eye-catching shots. I mean, you saw at the end of the fight, Derevyanchenko's face compared to Charlo. Charlo didn't have a scratch on him. Derevyanchenko was busted up around the face. Both eyes, swollen, cut, etc. Because those accurate, clean shots from Charlo all the way through the fight had taken their toll. So he did a better job than Golovkin and did a better job than Danny Jacobs on this same opponent. Hats off to him. Kudos. Let's see who Jermall Charlo can get in the ring with next. This was obviously a defense of his World Boxing Council middleweight title. Has he been made the full champion yet? Is Canelo strangely still holding onto this franchise champion status at middleweight? I don't know what the latest is on that. Perhaps that's been done away with. But it will be good to see Charlo face off against the other middleweights who are around at the moment. And as I mentioned in a recent video, I'd like to see Charlo, even though this guy's not a world champion at the moment, but just stylistically, I'd like to see Charlo against Munguia. I think that'd be a really fun fight. Charlo is the more skilled of the two, no doubt. But as I say, Munguia is very, very energetic. He's very enthusiastic. He's young. He's still learning. He's big as well, just like Charlo's big. And actually, I should mention that even though Charlo's the guy moving up in weight, and Derevyanchenko, I think, has been middleweight his whole career, Charlo looked like the naturally bigger guy. It's kind of like when Nonito Donaire moved up in weight and then fought Rigondeaux. Rigondeaux looked significantly smaller than Nonito Donaire, which just shows you the nonsense which is the weight divisions in boxing. Because these guys are all dehydrating themselves, or many of them, by crazy amounts of weight, you really don't know who's the bigger guy until they get in the ring a lot of the time. It's like Canelo has fought certain guys. You know, Canelo earlier on in his career came up from welterweight, then 154, then 160. And really, you saw him in certain fights at 160 against established 160 pounders, and you're thinking, hang on, Canelo looks bigger than the other guy. And that was the case here with Charlo. You know, he looked like the bigger guy than Derevyanchenko. So anyway, let's see where Charlo goes from here. Good performance. I would say that this, based upon Derevyanchenko's previous outings against high-profile middleweights in Danny Jacobs and Golovkin, I would say this stands as Jermall Charlo's best performance to date, at least on paper. And this will stand him in good stead because the Charlos don't have the greatest reputation among the wider boxing public. Obviously, they've got their fans, but among the wider boxing public, a lot of people look at the Charlos as maybe, you know, guys who believe themselves to be better than they really are, or guys who believe themselves to be greats when they haven't got the resumes yet to justify it. And obviously, Jermall had that contentious decision against Korobov. His brother lost to Tony Harrison, you know? So some people look at that and say, these guys are far too arrogant. You know, their records don't justify this level of arrogance. That's how I should phrase it. But this performance against Derevyanchenko will go some way to justifying some of their arrogance. Look, I'm not saying that arrogance can never be justified. It's all a matter of opinion, okay? But some people, they have the mindset that you're only allowed to be arrogant if you're actually that good. If you're not actually that good, then be humble. Whereas other people will say, no, you should never be arrogant, irrespective of how good you are. Personally, I care most about what fighters are doing in the ring. Some of them are arrogant outside of the ring in a not very charismatic, not very entertaining way. And the Charlos, in my view, fit into that category. But then you get others who are arrogant, but they're funny with it. And I like those kind of fighters from an entertainment perspective outside the ring. But ultimately, where I'm going to judge a fighter is the fights they take and the performances that they put on. And Jermall Charlo put on a real good performance here. So hats off to him. Kudos. And a good night for the Charlo brothers.